Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. And if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make a modern crochet top. The idea for this go around was where casual meets classy, so naturally I thought mock neck cutout tank. This tank / cutout top hybrid features the Trinity stitch for texture, the aforementioned mock neck for class, and a unique shake that's made for the runway. Speaking of, whether your style is runway chic or casual comfy, we've got you covered. We have hundreds of modern crochet patterns with new patterns weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on with the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 200 grams of yarn, and that's 350 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us which you prefer, mints or gum. I have always loved gum. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 5 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and Trinity stitch. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain, the width that we would like the top of our middle detail to be. So we're going to start with the top of our middle detail, which is the most narrow part that we have for our middle detail, and that's going to align with the base of our neck. Now this middle detail measurement is completely up to you, but I would suggest to make a chain that is about an inch or 2 less than the width of the base of your neck. I'm going to start by making a chain of 7, and that's 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, we are starting with our Trinity stitch. So after that last chain, we're going to chain 1, and then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to single crochet. So bring our hook down into that second chain. We're going to insert our hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Now our first Trinity stitch for every row is always going to start with just 1 single crochet. Now right after that, doing our Trinity stitch, we're going to need to pull up a total of 4 loops. So for this first Trinity stitch, we're always going to start by inserting our hook into that same chain that our single crochet is in. So into that same stitch, insert your hook, pull through for a total of 2 loops on our hook. Right after that, we're going to insert our hook into that following chain, yarn over, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, and then into the chain right after that as well. We're going to insert our hook, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then from here, we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4 for 1 loop on our hook, and then to finish off our Trinity stitch, we're going to gently yarn over and pull through 1. So just a chain to finish off our Trinity stitch, and that's always going to be how we do our first Trinity. Now let's do our second Trinity stitch together. We're going to need to pull up a total of 4 loops again. So start by inserting our hook into that same stitch that our last Trinity stitch was worked into. So into that last stitch, insert, pull through for 2 loops, into that following chain, pull through, and then into that following chain, pull through for a total of 4 loops on a hook. Then yarn over, pull through all 4, and then chain 1. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat that second Trinity stitch that we just did together until we have a total of 2 chains left. Now I am actually at the end of my row, and I have 1, 2 chains left, so now let's do the last one together. we're all going to start by inserting our hook into that same last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into. So this is mine, and pull through. Into that following chain, which is the second to last, pull through, and then into that following chain, which is the last, and pull through. We should all now have a total of 4 loops on our hook, so we're going to yarn over and pull through all 4. And when it comes to doing our last trinity stitch, we will not be doing a chain 1. We're going to single crochet into that same stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, and we're doing that so that the edge can stay nice and blunt. So after we pull through all 4, just into that last stitch that our last trinity stitch was worked into with a single crochet. And right after that, we are going to need to increase into the ends of every row as well. So after that single crochet into that same last chain, we're going to be doing a half double and a double crochet. So from here, yarn over, insert your hook into that same last stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 for a half double, and then 1 double crochet. So yarn over, insert into that same last stitch, pull through 2, pull through 2. Now our row 1 is finished. We're now basically going to repeat our row 1 until we get the total width that we'd like for this portion to be. So let's get started on our second row together. Getting started on every trinity stitch row, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now let's do the first one together. Our first trinity stitch is always going to start with 1 single crochet into that first stitch. And now I need to pull up 4 loops. So inserting your hook into that same stitch that our single crochet is in, pull through for 2 loops into that following stitch, pull through for 3 loops, and then into the stitch right after that, pull through for 4 loops. Then yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1 to finish this first trinity stitch. Let's do the next one. We're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into, pull through into that following, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, and pull through. Then yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to finish off our second trinity stitch. And now we're going to continue to do that previous trinity stitch until we have 2 stitches left. So I have just 1 more left to do before we do our last one, so let's do the following one together again. Now we're going to repeat our previous trinity stitch, so as a refresher, we're going to insert our hook into that same stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into. This is mine. Pull through into that following stitch, pull through and into the stitch right after that, and pull through. When we have those 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to finish off that trinity stitch, and we're going to repeat that until we have 2 stitches left. Now I have my 2 stitches left, so now let's do our last trinity stitch together again. We're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous trinity stitch was worked into. So this is mine. Pull through into that following stitch, which is our second to last. Pull through and then into that last stitch. And pull through. We should all have 4 loops on our hook, so yarn over, pull through all 4, and since this is our last trinity stitch, we're going to do a single crochet instead of a chain. So into that last stitch from our previous row, insert with a single crochet right after we pull through all 4. And like I said in the previous clip, we're going to need to increase at the end of every row. So right after that single crochet, another half double and double crochet into that same last stitch. So yarn over into that last stitch with a half double, and then into that same last stitch with a double crochet. And that's basically it. And from here, we're going to continue this row, so a trinity stitch row with an increase into the end of every row, until the width can now reach from mid-collarbone to mid-collarbone. And we want to just make sure that we are not exceeding that mid-collarbone to mid-collarbone measurement because we still need space for our straps. Now, just some really quick tips before I let you guys get to it. Since we're doing an increase into the ends of every row, we should have 1 extra trinity stitch set from our previous row. So just as a refresher, for my first row, I have 1, 2, 3 trinity stitch sets, and we're not including that increase. So for my following trinity stitch row, I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then an increase. And last quick tip, our increase is a single, half double, and double, because if we just do an increase of 3 single crochets at the end of every row, our work will end up curving. So we want this all to stay as flat as possible. But now that we have all of that out of the way, continue to repeat this row. I'll meet you back once we have the width that we'd like for our middle detail to be, and then I will meet you back. I have now reached the total width for my middle detail. Like I said, it's from mid-collarbone to mid-collarbone, and I have a total height of about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, or a total of 9 rows. From here, we're going to continue on with our Trinity stitch for the length of the entire piece that we want, but now without any increases or decreases, so this is going to be pretty simple. Let's just get started on the first one together. As a refresher, we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. We're going to start with our first Trinity stitch, so really quickly, single crochet into the last stitch from our previous row. Insert your hook into that same stitch that our single crochet is in, into that following stitch, and then into the stitch right after that, for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to finish off this first Trinity stitch. Now let's do our second one. We're now going to insert our hook into that same stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into. So into that last stitch, pull through, following, pull through, into that following once more, pull through for another total of 4 loops on our hook. Pull through all 4, chain 1, and we're going to continue to repeat that second Trinity stitch until we have 2 stitches left. Now we've made our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch until we have 1, 2 stitches left, so now let's do our last one together. It's going to be done exactly the same one as the last ones from all of our previous rows, but without the increase. So just to do this, we're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through, into that following, which should be our second to last, pull through, and then into our following, which should be our last, pull through all 4, and for this last one, all we're going to do is not do a chain 1, but single crochet into that last stitch, and then that's it. After that single crochet, we aren't going to be doing any more stitches, so chain 1, flip our work, and then repeat. But right before we get started on the following row, we're going to want to insert our stitch markers into the edge of this row that we just did together, so that we know this is where we stopped increasing. And now that we have our stitch markers into place, we're now going to continue to repeat our previous row until we get the length of the top that we want. So making sure that we're placing this first row that we did at the base of our neck, since this is going to be a mock neck, and I'm going to continue this until I reach my hip because I want a full length top. If you want a dress or if you want a crop top, go ahead and just continue this until you get your length that you want, and I'll meet you back right after an even number row. I am back with the length of my middle detail. I have a total of 58 rows and my length is just about 17 inches or 43 centimeters. And now we're going to start working on our side panel. So from where we're at along the bottom, let's all do a chain 1 and we're going to work into the side of our middle detail. We're all going to start by putting 1 single crochet into every side row until we reach our stitch marker. So let's do the first one together. This is my first side row that I have right here. I'm going to find that top loop, which should be this little gap right here. I'm going to insert my hook with 1 single crochet. Now this is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert in through that gap with 1 single crochet. We're going to continue this to reach our stitch markers. Let's do this again. This is my following side row. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop with 1 single crochet. And then this is my following side row. So find that top loop and single crochet. Continue this until we reach our stitch marker stitch. Making sure that we're working into that side row because remember that was the first row where we didn't do any increases or decreases. Once we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. So I've made my way all the way up with my single crochet row. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now our following row is going to be a half double crochet row. Now for some of you that are a little bit curious, we did do a chain up of 1 and cut because we need to show the front of our half double crochet row so that the ribbing for the back loop slip stitch row that we're going to do after that shows along the front. So how we're going to get started with our first half double crochet row is insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of the front panel, making sure that our single crochet row, the front is faced up towards us. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just want the height, and we're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one because we're going to need to increase together. So just to do the first half double crochet together, we're going to yarn over. Start by inserting our hook into that same stitch that our chain 2 is in. And if you're like me, you should have a tail end. I'm just going to place that over my hook so we can weave it in as we go. And all we're going to do is yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull all 3. And that is our first half double crochet. Let's do one more. Yarn over, insert your hook into that following stitch, pull through all 3, and continue this until we have 1 stitch left. We've made our way up, putting 1 half double crochet into every stitch, and we left the last one. Now into that last one, we're going to do an increase of 3 single crochets so we can get a smooth curve up to our shoulder. So all that's going to be is a yarn over, and then into that last stitch, insert with 1 half double crochet, and then into that same last stitch with a second, and then into that same last stitch with a third half double crochet. That is our increase of 3. Now from here, our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. So chain 1 and flip your work. Now our back loop slip stitch row isn't going to have any increases or decreases. So just find the last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop. And then from here, yarn over, gently pull through both loops on our hook. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch, find that back loop, insert your hook, gently pull through both. And we're going to continue to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row could be a little too tight to work into. I'll meet you back at the end of this row. We've made our way down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now from here, we're going to alternate between a back loop half double and back loop slip stitch row. So just to get started on the following row together, we're going to chain 2 and flip our work to prepare for our half double crochet row. Now this half double crochet row is going to be a repeat of our previous half double crochet row, but now within the back loops. So yarn over, find that last stitch and insert into that back loop only, pull through all 3, and just to do one more, yarn over, find that following stitch's back loop, pull through all 3. And we're going to continue to put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one, and now into that last back loop, we're going to do another increase of 3. So yarn over, insert into that last back loop with 1 half double, into that same back loop with a second, and into that same back loop with a third half double crochet. Now from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on an increase of 3 until we're ready to do our strap. Now since the increase portion for our middle detail already reaches mid collarbone, I wouldn't suggest to do too many of these rows because we don't want our strap to be too far off of our shoulder. We still want it to be somewhere along the middle. So I'm actually all finished right here. But what we're going to do from here is make a chain that reaches all the way up to the top of our shoulder. Now I have already made my chain. I made a chain of 20, and that's just about 5 inches or 12 centimeters. And now we're going to continue on with our row sequence for our shoulder portion. So our following row is going to be a slip stitch row. So at the end of our chain, we're going to block off that last chain, do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, and into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, gently pull through everything, and then into that following chain, insert, gently pull through everything. And from here, we're going to continue to put 1 slip stitch into every chain. And once we reach the body, we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now, since this is the shoulder portion, we aren't going to have to do any increases or decreases. So once when we've made our way all the way down with our back loop slip stitch row, at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up. From there, we're going to continue our back loop slip stitch row and back loop half double crochet row, again with no increases and no decreases, until we get a shoulder strap the width that we like. So you can make this as wide or as narrow as you'd like. I'd like for mine to be somewhat narrow, so I'll meet you back once when I have mine all finished up, and I'll meet you back right after a back loop slip stitch row. Now my shoulder portion is all done. I just did a total of 1, 2, 3 shoulder rows, and counting from my first single crochet row, I have a total of 7 side panel rows. This width is just about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. My total width is 7 inches or 18 centimeters, and my total height, counting from this top point all the way to the bottom, is roughly 17 inches or 43 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do our underarm. So first things first, we're going to put this up to ourselves and insert our stitch marker into any stitch that we have that's nearest to the corner of our underarm, making sure that the shoulder portion is placed on top of our shoulder, and the first row for our middle detail is at the base of our neck. I've inserted my stitch marker into the 27th stitch from the top, and this is just about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now from here, since we all should have ended along the bottom, we're going to be putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 2 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we're nearly finished with our first underarm row. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 2 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2 half double crochets. We're going to yarn over, insert a hook into that second to last back loop, yarn over, pull through. Also insert your hook into that following stitch's back loop, or the stitch that's right before our stitch marker, into that back loop as well, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and that is how we do our decrease. Now our back loop slip stitch rows are not going to have any increases or decreases, so chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2 to decrease together once more. We're nearly finished with our third underarm row. I did my slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. At the end of that row, I did a chain 2, flip my work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2, and now we're going to decrease together. So yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last stitch's back loop, pull through, and then also insert your hook into that last stitch's back loop, pull through all 4, and that is that. We're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that ends on a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets until this portion that we have can stretch, because it does have a decent amount of stretch to it, over to mid underarm. When we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut after we finish a back loop half double crochet row, and then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the other side of our front panel. I am back, and one side of my front panel is all finished. Counting from my first single crochet row, I have a total of 12 rows. This width is just about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters unstretched, or my total width is about 8 inches or 20 centimeters. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we're going to do the same thing that we did here on the other side. But like I said in one of our previous clips, our ribbing that we have isn't reversible, so we're actually going to need to insert our stitch marker into some different places, and then I'll talk you guys through each section. So getting started on the other side, we're going to make sure that our work is first flipped right side out and right side up, meaning the ribbing that we have is faced upwards. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the side row that our stitch marker is in along the top, and then we're going to do our single crochet row. So making sure that our hook is in through that side row that our stitch marker is in, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and then we're going to put 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way down, and at the end of the row, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Let's just do the first one together. We're going to be inserting our first single crochet into that same side row that our stitch marker is in, or that chain 1. So insert your hook, place your tail end over your hook, because we like to weave it in as we go, and then single crochet once. Into that following side row, insert into that top loop, single crochet, and continue this until we don't have any more stitches left. Our single crochet row is finished. We did do a chain up of 1 and cut after the single crochet row, and now we're going to be inserting our hook into that top corner stitch, or that first single crochet that we made when we started that single crochet row. Now we're doing it this way for the same reason why we did a chain up of 1 and cut on the other side. We want to show the front of the single crochet row, and we also need to show the front of the half double crochet row so that we can see the ribbing for the following slip stitch row. Now this side is going to mirror the other side. So since we're along the top, we are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain 2, Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, we just want the height. And since we're along the top, we're going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, and into that same stitch that our chain 2 is in, we're going to insert with 3 half doubles. So there is 1, there is our second, and there is our third half double crochet. Once we have those 3 half doubles into that first stitch, we're going to put 1 half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. I'll meet you back along the top. I am back. We have finished up our single crochet row, half double, and then our back loop slip stitch row. Now from here, we're going to get started on our following back loop half double crochet row together. And since we're along the top, we're going to start that with an increase of 3 back loop half doubles. So let's start with a chain 2 and flip our work. So since we're along the top, we're going to yarn over, find that last stitch from our previous row, and insert into that back loop with 1 half double, into that same back loop with a second, and then into that same back loop with a third half double crochet. From here, continue putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and then from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, so a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and a back loop half double crochet row that starts with an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets for the same amount of rows that we have as the other side's neckline. So I actually have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. That first row was our single crochet row, and over here I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Once I'm finished up with this single crochet row, I'll meet you back to get started on the shoulder portion. But we will all end along the bottom, so do a chain up of 1 and cut after our last row. The first half of my neckline is finished. Like I said, I have a total of 4 rows here for my neckline, and I have a total of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Since we all ended along the bottom, I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now we're going to do our shoulder strap together. So we're going to insert our hook into this top corner stitch. And we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder. I made a chain of 20 here. So from here, I inserted my yarn onto my hook and made a chain of 20. And what we're going to do right after we make our chain is do a chain up of 1 and cut. And then from here, we're going to insert our hook into the bottom of our piece and then do our back loop slip stitch row all the way up because we need to have the ribbing showing. So I'll meet you back along the bottom. So right after we cut our chain, we're now going to make sure that we're looking at the back of our piece. We're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch and insert our yarn onto our hook. We're going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then once we reach our chain, 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now, since we're mirroring our side panels, this shoulder portion will have the same amount of stitches as our other shoulder portion if you'd like to double check. And right after this row, we're going to do a back loop half double crochet row with absolutely no increases and no decreases as well, because this is going to be a mirror of our first shoulder portion. From there, we're going to repeat our back loop slip stitch row and back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases until we have the same amount of rows as the shoulder portion that we made on the other side. When we do a chain up of 1 and cut since we should have ended along the top, and then I'll meet you back to finish up our underarm. So my shoulder portion for the second side panel is all finished up. Just to show you, I had a total of 1, 2, 3 rows for this side, and along this side I also have 1, 2, 3 rows. Now since we ended along the top, we did do a chain of 1 and cut, and now we're going to do our underarm. So first things first, we're going to want to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that we inserted into the other side. So if you have my numbers, I inserted my stitch marker into the 27th stitch from the top. So I did the same thing over here. And now we're going to be inserting our hook into that stitch that we have that's nearest to our stitch marker stitch, working down towards the bottom and making sure that our work is still flipped right side up, meaning the ribbing is faced up towards us. We are going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then we're all going to start with a chain 2. Now that chain 2 isn't going to count as a stitch, we just want the height. And since we're along the top, we're going to start with a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over, We're all going to start by inserting a hook into that same stitch that our chain 2 is in. We're going to insert into that same back loop, pull through, and then into that following stitch's back loop, insert your hook, pull through, yarn over, and pull through all 4 of those loops. And from here, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Our slip stitch row, again, will not have any increases or decreases. Now from there, we're going to repeat those 2 rows. So a back loop half double crochet row that starts with a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets, and then a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. And we're going to continue those 2 rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the first underarm portion. When we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. The entirety of my front panel is all finished, and now have a total of 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters unstretched. Now from here, we're going to make a second panel that is exactly the same. So go ahead and repeat everything that we did for the front panel, and I'll meet you back to seam everything together. So now that we have both the front and the back panel finished, we're now going to seam our sides together. So this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so we're going to first make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have for the front panel is faced up, and then the ribbing that we have for the back panel is face down. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And now from here, we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're all going to start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel, and we're going to insert only into that front loop. We are then going to find that next available stitch into the back panel and insert only into that back loop, then yarn over, pull through all 3. Let's do this again. Into the next stitch into the front panel, insert your hook in through that front loop. Into the next stitch into the back panel, insert in through that back loop, pull through all 3, and then just once more. Next stitch into the front panel, into the front loop, next stitch into the back panel, into the back loop, and slip stitch. We're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat what we did here on the other side. So now that our sides are all seamed up, we're now going to seam our shoulders. So this is going to be pretty simple. This is going to be a single crochet seam, so we're first going to need to make sure that our work is now flipped wrong side out, meaning the ribbing that we have is now along the inside. And next we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now since we have a few side rows to work into, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then 2 single crochets into every side half double crochet row, so let's get this started. Everyone's first side row should be a side slip stitch row, which is this little ribbing that we have right here. We're going to insert our hook in through that top loop, find that top loop within the back panel as well, and then if you're like me, we should have some tail ends, and I'd like to weave them in as I go, so I'm going to place that over my hook and single crochet once. Now everyone's following side row should be a side half double crochet row. Like I said, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into there, so find that top loop, insert in through that top loop in the front panel, find the following side half double crochet row within the back panel, insert in through that top loop, and then single crochet, and we're going to be putting 1 more single crochet into the same side half double crochet row. Now the second one is going to be a little bit easier since it should be gathered. So find that top loop within the front panel, find that same top loop within the back panel, insert, and then single crochet, and that is our second single crochet. And we're going to continue on with this stitch sequence until we don't have any more rows left to work into. Now I just have 1 more left, so I'm going to do that with you. This is my following side row, which is a side slip stitch row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert my hook. I'm going to find my following side slip stitch row within the back panel, insert my hook in through that top loop, and single crochet. And then for me, that is it. So I'm going to do a chain up of 1 and cut. Continue to do this until you don't have any more side rows left. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. Now that everything is seamed together, we're going to get started on the neckline. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is slipped right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have is faced outwards. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel, and we're going to single crochet across the top of the front. So insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. So find that first stitch, it will be the first one that our chain 1 is in. Insert your hook with a single crochet. And we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way across. So we should have the same amount of single crochets as chains that we made when we started off this entire piece. Now that I've made my way across with my single crochet row, we're now going to make a chain that can reach up and over our shoulder to reach the top corner stitch of the back panel. But this is going to need to fit around our heads, so make sure that we're making this chain long enough. I've already measured mine out. I need a total of 8 inches or 20 centimeters for this one side, so I'm going to start by making a chain 30. So now that I have my chain, I'm going to single crochet it into the top corner stitch of the back panel. So I've already flipped my work over. I'm going to insert my hook into this top corner stitch with 1 single crochet to connect it, and that single crochet also counts as the first single crochet that we're going to need to make, working our way across the top of the back panel. So from here, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, remembering that that first single crochet counts as our first one. Now that we've single crocheted across the top of our back panel, we're now going to make the same chain that we just made. So for me, I made a chain 30. So from here, I'm going to make another chain 30. And now that we have our chain, I have flipped my work over. And I'm now going to slip stitch it into that chain 1 that we made when we started off this piece. So making sure that we're not inserting into that first single crochet, that chain 1 is going to be a little bit tucked underneath there. I'm just going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and now this is going to be the width of our neckline. So just as a really quick tip, we're going to want to put this over our head to make sure that this can fit over our head. If it's a little too tight, add some more chains, but making sure that we're making it even on both sides, or if it's a little too loose, take away some chains, also making sure that both sides of our chains are even. And then we're going to do a single crochet row as well, so this is going to be pretty simple. Right after we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're going to chain 1, and then just make our way across, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, and also 1 single crochet into every chain. When we've made our way around, slip stitch into that chain space. And as another really quick tip, this single crochet row that we're currently doing is going to be as wide as this neckline can stretch. So when we have slip stitched into that chain space, double check and make sure that this can fit over your head. If it's a little too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. And now that we have single crocheted along our neckline and tried it on, making sure that it fits around our head, we're ready to get started on the length of our mock neck. So we're all going to start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our mock neck to be. I'd like for mine to be about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 6. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row. So block off that last chain, do a chain 1 into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, a slip stitch, and continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Now that we've put a slip stitch into every chain, we're going to connect it into the base. So we're all going to start by finding that next available stitch into the base, insert your hook with a slip stitch, and that slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect our work. Now just to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that next available stitch. That also doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work again. And now we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So find that last stitch from our previous row and insert into that back loop, pull through everything, into that following stitch's back loop, and pull through everything. And continue doing this till you reach the end of the row. When you reach the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. We are back and we have 1, 2, 3 rows nearly finished. Now we just need to connect it into the base. So let's all start by finding that next available stitch, insert your hook in through there with a slip stitch, and then into that following stitch into the base, slip stitch into there to work our way up to the following row. Those 2 slip stitches that we did into the base don't count as stitches, and flip our work. And then just like our previous row, we're going to put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, And that's it. We're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back to seam everything together. So we have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together. Now this seam is going to be the same seam that we did for the sides, so an outside loop slip stitch seam. So first things first, let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side up, and then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitches of both the front and the back panel. We're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and let's just do the first one since we already know how to do this. We're all going to find that first available stitch into the front panel, insert in through that front loop. Then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel, insert in through that back loop, then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that our collar is all seamed up, we're just going to clean up all of our edges and then we'll be all finished. So we're going to start with the inner edge that we have right here. We're going to start by inserting our hook into the top of that single crochet row that we have on top of our neck detail, and then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook and pull through. Now from here we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So let's all start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to insert into that top loop with just 1 single crochet. Now let's find our following side row. This is my following side row right here. Now into that top loop, I'm going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and then into that same gap with a second single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook into there with just 1 single crochet, and this is my following side row, so I'm going to find that top loop and insert into there with 2. We're going to continue doing that, making our way all the way down until we reach our first side single crochet row. Now I've made my way all the way down to my first side single crochet row right over here. So all I'm going to do is insert my hook into the edge of that side single crochet row and insert with just 1 single crochet. And now from here we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double and then 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row. So let's do this together. This is my first side row that I have right here, and it's a side half double crochet. So I'm going to insert into there with 2 single crochets. There's 1, there's 2, and then my side slip stitch row, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. And we're going to continue this until we reach our regular stitches. Once we reach our regular stitches, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and over. Once we reach the back, we're going to continue to put 2 single crochet into every side half double, and then 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row until we're ready to work our way up the side of our detail. Then again, we're going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. We're going to slip stitch into that side single crochet row that we have on top of our middle detail and do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. So now that our single crochet row to clean up the inner cutout is all finished, we're now going to clean up our armholes. So first things first, let's all make sure the work is flipped right side up, and then we're going to be inserting our hook into the last stitch that we have into our side seam. Then insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, we're going to be putting 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch, and then 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way up and over. So to do our first side half double crochet row, we're going to find that top loop and insert our hook. If you're like me, we should have a handful of tail ends, so place those over your hook, and then we're going to single crochet around everything. Now we have another one to do. Now since this is our side half double crochet row, we're going to have to do 1 more single crochet, so find that top loop again, and then insert with a single crochet. And our following side row should be our side slip stitch row, so find that top loop, insert your hook in through there, and insert with a single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue on with this single crochet row. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then repeat everything we did here on the other side. And now that our single crochet row along the inner cutout and along our armhole are finished on both sides, we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is weave in all of our ends. There you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. All of those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye!